Do you love spy books, movies, and TV? Then the Spybrary Podcast is for you.
It's March 1961. We're all back here together to talk about the latest James Bond book that's been released, Thunderball. Joined today by David Craggs. How are you, David?
Very well, Shane. Very well, thank you.
Ian, how are you, sir? Ian Douglas from the Hildebrand Facebook group.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Shane?
Fantastic. And Andy Onyx, author Andy Onyx. How are you, Andrew?
I'm fine, thank you very much, Shane. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, David, first of all, thank you for getting us an advance copy. Very kind of you. I know you have this very personal relationship with Ian Fleming, but what's going on?
We've had some excellent news and also subsequently some not so good news. I'll fill you in. At the beginning of this month, Life magazine published John F. Kennedy's list of his top 10 authors. And From Russia with Love was featured. Overnight, Signet, who are Ian's American paperback publisher, invested in some advertising. And Ian Fleming is now the biggest selling thriller writer in America.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal news. And he, as you can imagine, the old buffer was well chuffed with that. So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff is, as we discussed last time, Ian is desperate to get his stuff on screen, and he's been working on this film script with this chap, Kevin McClory, and another gentleman called Jack Whittingham. And it seems like they've fallen out, and the whole thing has sort of backfired. But meanwhile, when we're going to discuss Ian's latest and greatest, the accusation from Kevin McElroy is that Ian's latest and greatest is based on the film script that they developed. And consequently, Kevin McElroy took Ian to court to get an injunction to prevent publication. And the judge ruled, because all of the advanced reader copies had been sent out and that the book had been printed, that it was too late to prevent publication. But he has ruled without prejudice, and he has left the door open for Kevin McElroy to sue Ian for breach of copyright. So the old buffer is not pleased about that, but things went from bad to worse, because a week or so later, he was in his regular meeting with the Sunday Times, and he had a heart attack. And he's now down in a Hove hospital recuperating. And I must admit, when I saw him, he did look a bit grey around the gills. He smoked far too many of these gaspers. So I am worried about the old boy, to be honest. But so hopefully he'll recuperate and he'll get back into the saddle. In the meantime, one thing that he has done is he's sold the film rights to a new chap called Harry Saltzman, and he's given him a 6-month option on the movies. Evidently, the deal was done for little or no money, because he wants that deal in place to stop Kevin McElroy getting the film rights to Bond. So I don't know who this Harry Saltzman geezer is. I mean, it'll probably come to nothing. But there we are.
The court case with McClory is deeply worrying, and you wonder if that's, one of the reasons, other than the smokes and the gin, for...
I imagine the stress of the court case could probably cause a heart attack, really.
Well, 60 gaspers a day will cause a heart attack as well.
Yeah, and that doesn't help, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't help. No.
Well, we'll get on to health in a moment, because I was kind of shocked by some of this. This book's a bit radical for me. We'll get on to that in a moment. But I think it's interesting you say that about the McClory business, because I wasn't aware of that. And I personally felt this book, Thunderball, had a different feel. in one way, it was good to be back in familiar Fleming territory with the whole novel and not the short stories. But what I will say on that is when I first read For Your Eyes Only, I was disappointed I wasn't getting a full fat novel, as it were. But as months have gone by, I've kind of returned and dipped in and out of them, and I'm finding a new appreciation for the short story that he's written. I think it was just so much of a shock to the system. But this one just felt like more men's adventure Thunderball to me than what we got served previously. Andy, what do you think?
I'd go along with that because, to be honest, it seemed a lot more charged than the recent. There's a lot more machismo, real red-blooded stuff. And it's also really, again, we've got the book of two halves, haven't we? We've got the all the hell farm and the lead up, and then when he goes abroad and goes to Nassau. I thought that the first half also had an unusual levity to it. It seemed a lot lighter. It was quite funny, I think, intentionally in some places, not just that kind of schoolboy sniggery stuff. It was really quite dry, and there was a lot of levity there. Great opening, straight into Bond. And he's in a bit of a bad way. He's not exactly on cloud nine, is he? So that I thought that was very well written, that he put across the throes of having a stinking hangover, which kind of magnifies all his other grievances and problems that he's amassed over these years, really. Because at first I thought, I'm going to have to use the word I don't want to use, but I thought, no, that's really par for the course when you've got a stinking hangover, Yeah. So that's it. I mean, the second half, I felt, again, once we'd got to the island, once we got to Nassau, and he'd met the girl, he left the girl. I thought we were hitting pieces of scrubland where it lost pace several times in the second half of the book, whether it was with too much information, too much technical information, whether parts of it were overwritten. I thought it could have actually been a much better book if it had had more judicious editing, particularly of the second half. But there you are. That's my thumbnail story.
What say you, David?
I enjoyed it. I thought there were several features that were very interesting. First of all, the opening. It was a triple opening, really, because it starts with Bond and his health issues being sent to shrublands by M. Next, we have the launch of Spectre, this new global organization in Boulevard Haussmann in Paris. And then we go to the briefing with them for the mission. And it was a sort of triple opening, which I thought was very interesting. And it made for a lot of character development, actually. We saw Bond's housekeeper, the Scot May, really for the first time. And we got to learn about her character and her acerbic wit and her Scottishness, etc. And then we saw more development of M as a character as well, where we saw that M is a little idiosyncratic in as much as he goes off on these trends. He likes some new things, and his new kick is natural healthcare, which I thought was very interesting. And then we see the development, of course, of the character Bond himself, who is, after all these missions, in dubious physical shape. And M makes it clear to him that if he wants to stay as a 00, he needs to sort himself out. So there was a great opening, and there was a lot of character development in that piece. And the other thing which I thought was very interesting as well is Ian's really getting into the 60s now. And he thinks that there are a lot of references to this new modern decade that we all face. When he's being driven to shrublands, for example, by the taxi driver, there's reference to this new kid on the block, this Tommy Steele, who plays. I don't understand what these children are doing these days, but playing the banjo or something. And then you've got sort of reference to this guy's greased back haircut, which is very popular with these teddy boys. So the kid is really getting, to coin a new expression, he's getting very lithic, yes? So he's entering the new decade, which I think is good. And he's clearly modernizing Bond or exposing Bond's attitudes to the new decade, which I thought was interesting. Then, perhaps we can go on and discuss the other aspects of things, but certainly in terms of the opening, and it's on a general point, it is, I think, the most cinematic book that Fleming has written. So it's not really a surprise that he's having these problems, as it were.
How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was his. I mean, I suspect it's his longest book, and there's a lot of detail in there. It does. I agree. There are some pacing issues, but I'd say also it's the most exciting of the Bond books so far. I think I'd probably prefer From Russia with Love, but I think this is the kind of biggest, the most spectacular. This is, as David said, this is cinematic. Every scene you can imagine as you're reading it, seeing it on a big screen. And I think that was obviously the intention. I think the shrubland scene, which is about a quarter of the book, it seems to go on for a long time, but it's so well done, and there's a lot of humour in there. And it's very much like, you see Bond at the start, and as you say, he's really hungover. He's in bad shape, and he's in no fit state to take on a big mission. And this is probably his biggest mission so far. And it's not, it's not Smersh, it's not a foreign power. It's just a group of mercenaries based in Paris who just want to make money through, revenge, terrorism, extortion, whatever it takes.
Well, he might be in bad shape to take on a mission, but he's not in bad shape to take on the young lady that's working.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think he'd had a lot of, weak soup by then. He's, obviously given up the fags and the booze. So, apart from trips to the cafe to have, very sweet tea, he's in good shape. He's a lot healthier.
He's eating live foods now, Ian, whatever that is. And
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
He's railing against dead foods, whatever that is, to poor old May. And, that was something... Go ahead.
I love the fact that May's so angry about it. There's literally tears in her eyes because she thinks he's not eating proper food.
Well, he's not, is he? He's eating twigs and muesli and stuff, Ian. Like this Birch Brenner stuff. I mean, the question is, David, you know him. Has Ian been to a health farm and he's going to rejuvenate? Well, obviously he's had the heart attacks. He isn't doing well. But, I mean, is he writing about himself here?
Well, actually, he has been to a health farm.
I thought he had.
I don't think he did him a whole lot of good. It's obviously inspired him to write about shrublands, yes, but he has been to a health farm, I understand. Yeah.
But I can imagine he saw some kind of device, and that's where the inspiration for the rack came from. But
do you think, though, just the last bit on the overview of the whole thing?
Yes.
One thing that I'd like to add is that I found that a strange thing has happened with Thunderball, a little bit in line with what David said, that it seems a lot less abstract. The whole thing seems a lot less abstract. So I don't know whether we're catching Bond up in the 60s or Bond is catching us up, but it's like we can see it, we can smell it. We can't quite touch this luxury lifestyle. Yeah. It seems with this new decade that the whole idea of Bond is you know, it's maybe coming into its purple period, if you like. You know,
Well, I think you're right. I think there's a
the only thing I think-
modernization of Bond in the book in many regards. There's much more branding. I mean, when he meets the first of the villains, Count Lip, at Shrublands, you know, Count Lip's wardrobe is described in great detail. Anvisman Shepherd's his tailor. I was very pleased with that, actually, because Anvisman Shepherd's my tailor as well. That's by the by. And much mention of cashmere sweaters, watches, and all the rest of the stuff. And of course, Bond's got a new car that's described. Well, it's not a new car; it's rebuilt a wreck. It's Bentley, which is described in great detail. So there's a real modernization of Bond going on, I think. And Ian's really getting into the 60s. I mean, bear in mind, I mean, he wrote this last year, so it was written in 1960. And he's recognized the importance of the new decade. And maybe as well, he's making a push to reach younger readers and reach female readers as well. With it.
Yeah, there's a lot of lifestyle references.
A lot of lifestyle references.
Like the food, the drink, the cigarettes, the cars, all the gadgets, the vehicles. There's a lot in there, a lot of detail.
Yeah, even
I almost look forward
to mention. You know, North by Northwest gets a mention.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I look forward to Ian's books as a travel log more than anything else. And I've been to Bahamas, but I love the scene where they think they're getting ripped off on the martinis. Great scene, because that we know we've all been, you more than most of us, David, to these resorts and get fleeced.
Value analysis on a martini, how much ingredients cost, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean that's true. But just before we, I mean. So that all the trappings are there. But the other thing that I think we should discuss as well, because it's very important, is the launch of Spectre. Because he's created a sort of global organization here. And it has many layers of villains in it. And if you think about the chronological order of the villains in the book, we have Count Lip, who's the villain at Shrublands. Then we move to Boulevard Usman to the meeting of Spectre, this special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion. Rolls off the lips.
Sounds like the tax man to me. But...
Yes. And within that meeting, of course, we meet this Blofeld chappie, who is the head honcho. And we learn about all of his colleagues around the table. So there's a multiplicity of villains there. And of course, we're introduced to number one, who's going to be in charge of this mission, our good friend Emilio Largo. So there's a lot, you know, we are actually a multiplicity of villains in the book, but there are three main villains, if you like. And then you have the mission itself, which is, okay, I mean, I can never imagine a time when terrorists would actually hijack a plane. I mean, I think that's completely implausible. Will never happen. But it makes a very good and very thrilling reading. So this Spectre organization are off to hijack this plane and capture these bombs from NATO.
So why do we think he's gone from Smersh, you know, Soviet run, to Spectre, which is global?
Well, Ian's pretty tied in with these things, and he was telling me that that Smersh was actually disbanded, I think in 1958. The Smurf no longer exists.
Right.
And I think the idea was Spectre, and there are some members of the old Smurf around the table as members of Spectre, was to give as a global enemy, and an enemy that, I mean, the very fact that Blofeld survives the book, it won't surprise me that the old boy isn't brought back in future, you know. But
I wondered also if it was to do with, the big shift in geopolitics for the election of JFK last year, and he has made very friendly noises to Moscow. Him and Khrushchev, will probably meet at some point. So does Ian think, well, actually, we may not have the Red Menace anymore as a foe? But what struck me in this book, maybe more so than others, and it's to your point, Andy, of the book being charged, there's a ticking clock. And I can't quite remember that before. Yes. It's like you've got X amount of time to solve this, or the world is going to be in bits.
Yes.
Plus, we all have we're all aware of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and then these things are out there. It's not, it is scary to me that someone could get hold of one of these things and fire it at a country. And so for me, this was a very thrilling plot, but thrilling in terms of, chilling and thrilling, as it were. But also just very, it's almost. Is this a warning? I know Fleming trying not to get too political, but is this a warning against the arms race? That, hey, it's all very well you countries building these arsenals, but if some gangsters get hold of this, we're in trouble.
I think he's thinking there could be a thawing of the tension between East and West. So he's thinking, well, if it does calm down, I don't want to write about Russia or Smersh, or it could go the other way. And I think he's thinking these things change quickly. And ever so, more quickly all the time. So he's thinking, let's avoid writing about this in case something changes completely, and I'll be out of date by the time it goes into publication. So I think just a theory, of course, but I think he might just be trying to avoid predicting the future, the near future.
The threat's there as well for us because everybody knows these new V bombers do carry atomic bombs. I have relatives in Lincolnshire, where a lot of RAF bases are there, and they see the V bombers flying around. Everybody's terrified of them because they know what they're carrying. So but
it's an unknown quantity, though, isn't it? Because it's it could be a deterrent. Who knows what will happen? As you say, if a terrorist organisation gets hold of them, we're at ransom, aren't we?
But in terms of Blofeld and this Spectre organisation, it reminds me a little bit. If we go way back to G.K. Chesterton and his man who was Thursday, that Blofeld's very much like a cross between Sunday, who was the mastermind of that anarchist organisation, and a good old Moriarty. Yeah, so it's to take things on a much higher scale than our usual baddies. Much broader.
Yes,
there you go. I mean, you could imagine a tentacled logo, actually, couldn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not us.
Yeah.
So, did we feel being into health foods really worked? For his character.
I think it provided some humour.
Yeah,
and it wasn't that. It was quite predictable that it wouldn't last very long with him because it seemed so out of character for him. So it did provide a lot of laughs. And then, of course, when Bond comes back and he's full of energy and enthusiasm and he's getting on everyone's nerves, obviously M has kind of fallen back on his old ways. So I kind of like that. And I think that would work well on a big screen.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem likely, but it was a nice touch, I thought.
I liked it when they wrote about Bond coming back and how Ponsonby, his PA, can't keep up with him and she wants the old Bond back because he's in early, he's working late, and everyone's had enough of him, haven't they?
Everyone hates him at that point.
But something that I think is very strong in this book, one of the themes for me personally was loyalty. How was it for you, Ian, having Felix back on the scene?
Oh, that was great. I think he's a really good character, and I love the friendship between them. And I enjoy it, although some of the scenes were a bit long-winded as Felix starts pontificating about how martinis are made or whatever. It's a nice touch. And I really love to see the two of them going out on the town together, eating, drinking, chasing girls, going to clubs, doing whatever. I just think it's something I'd love to see in a film. But I think it works so well. And I think Felix is a good character because he's like an American version of Bond, but he's different in that he's described as rangy, like lanky, tall, sandy-haired, and he's very animated, isn't he? He's very animated. He's not quiet like Bond. he never seems to shut up. So they're I think they're a good pairing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
what about you, Andy? How was that? How's the return of Felix for you?
He seemed to have a lot more dialogue this time, Light.
Definitely.
Yes, it was the biggest appearance, I'm sure.
Yeah, and again, he got really, really steamed up. I mean, he's a real red state fella, and he got really steamed up about the loss of money, big government, all this kind of thing. He had quite a few rants, didn't he? Not just against the barman, but again, he's for me, he's a bit not exactly a Dr. Watson character, because like Ian said, Mr. Douglas said that he's a man in his own right. He's not just there to sort of ask the questions.
He's a partner, isn't he?
Yeah,
really?
he is. He is a double act. He is a foil, definitely, for Bond. Although he did say he's struggling with that hook of his, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or was he? Because didn't he say there was one girl who quite liked the hook in that book?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about.
I don't want to go there.
That doesn't seem very likely to me.
We had really getting a swim thing on it, didn't he?
Yeah.
But you got to give the guy credit. I mean, he's lost his right arm, his leg, or his hand and his leg, and he's game for a rumble. Underwater. He's going to go in and have a clash with all the scuba gear on. And
he loves a battle, doesn't he? He gets bored if he's not getting into battle and doing something big.
You'd have thought that the last place he'd want to be. Yeah.
Let's talk about the villain in this piece in the Bahamas and Largo. How was Largo for you, David?
I thought it was very well defined. A real sort of spiv, a real playboy. He had all the trappings. Good-looking chap. Very successful with the women. Very rich. Nobody quite knows, where he gets his money from. He has this fantastic yacht, this Disco Volante. I mean, he was very well defined, and I thought it was certainly, particularly in conjunction with Blofeld, that their sort of double act where he'd have these very short conversations where he'd brief him on the progress of the mission. And I thought the whole thing was sort of juxtapositioned very well. And yeah, he's a nasty piece of work. But in a certain way, he's very reminiscent of the old pirates, I would say. He wasn't physically repulsive at all, which is, I mean, all of the Blofeld, of course, is physically repulsive. But Ian's trademark has always been to have grotesque villains. He's very influenced by, what did they call that author that always had for Fu Manchu sort of type villains? That's always been his thing. But no, this guy's good looking, suave playboy, and of course he's got his mistress, which is the famous Domina. So no, good villain.
Yeah, he even writes him as a Roman, doesn't he? He was a Roman, and he looked like a Roman.
Yes.
Not from the Rome of today, but from the Rome of the ancient coins.
Yeah.
The large, long face was sunburned, the deep mahogany brown, and the light glinted off the strong, rather hooked nose and the clean-cut lantern jaw that had been meticulously shaved before he'd started out late that afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah,
apparently he's got pectorals like dinner plates.
He's what, sorry?
He's got pectorals like dinner plates. That's how it sounded.
Yeah, that was one of the fellas that took Bond out to do the dive, wasn't it? He said,
right.
Yeah.
So there's
he's
a
a
lot...
large man with very large hands.
Yeah, like furry animals. He said his hands are like furry animals on the end of his arm.
That's it, yeah.
I was wondering if Ian had been, there's lots of talk about cigarettes. I mean, some parts of it, I don't know if Ian's been smoking some Levantine cigarettes. Do you know what I mean? I mean, some of the descriptions are a little bit strange. did make you laugh, you know.
Oh, it was certainly got into the tobacco world in a big way, because when
Yeah.
Domino was in the cigarette shop,
Yeah.
you know, she was looking for a brand that would make her stop smoking, and Bond made the appropriate recommendation, because he said he's always stopping smoking himself.
He's trying, yeah.
And then later on, we had the big discussion where she told him about her hero, who was the man on the player's cigarette packet. Yeah,
That's right.
That was a bizarre scene, then,
yes.
wasn't it? That went on for a long
Yeah,
time.
it was tobacco heavy, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And for you, Ian, what stood out for you about Largo?
I think the description of him as being piratical.
Mm.
I can imagine him having an eye patch in a film version. I think that would work well. But just his overall size and the fact that he's a good-looking playboy, and he's clearly a sadist and a mercenary, and he's all about himself, isn't he? He's an absolute narcissist. Yeah. But obviously, he's a big character, and I think he's one of the best villains I've seen so far. Definitely one of the best.
It is interesting that you mentioned pirates. Man. It's because he, you know, the cover story is a treasure hunt, which I thought was very clever, by the way.
Yeah, it does work so well.
You got these guys rocking out a strange boat to go and dive. Sorry, Ian?
Yeah, I was just saying he's so different to Blofeld, because Blofeld's a quieter man. He's not good looking. He's terrifying, but in different ways.
Massively fat.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like 280 pounds that used to be all muscle or something? He was described
as by a very well-structured, double-breasted jacket now.
Yeah. And all the agents of Spectre, they're absolutely terrified of him, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, he rules with a rod of iron. He's a hard man, but scary and totally charmless, I would say. Whereas Largo is charming in a bizarre way.
Mm.
You can imagine the ladies going with him.
I like the location for this novel, and we'll get on to that in a moment. But what I thought was interesting was, you know, when I do my pools coupon, I should really give him a call, because it's great that he's picked out of the whole globe. He's pinpointed the Bahamas as where the bombs are being stashed.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
But, you know, talking of underwater settings and descriptions, much of this novel takes place underwater. David, for you, you know, how does Fleming use these settings to create that tension and excitement?
He understands the marine world incredibly well, and I think that the descriptive scenes and the underwater action are just phenomenally well done. I can't think of another writer that would be able to achieve what he has achieved in terms of, well, perhaps Hemingway, you know, but I can't think of another sort of contemporary of his who could write such phenomenal and beautiful scenes, actually, in some regards. No, I think that this is really Ian's sort of piece de resistance. We've had several sort of very strong set pieces in his different novels and his different stories. And he's very, I mean, we saw in Live and Let Die, he's very fond, and Dr. No, I mean, he's very fond of the ocean, etc. But this time he really goes big on it. And I think it works extremely well.
Yeah, it does. It makes you want to go scuba diving, because his descriptions are so accurate, because he knows it, doesn't he? He's experienced it. So you read those sections, you think, I want to do that. I want to be there, even though it can be terrifying with barracudas and sharks and all kinds of creatures.
That scene that he wrote inside the plane with the small creatures and the octopus. That was pretty chilling, wasn't it, for Fleming?
Yes,
I mean, I've used that word twice on this, but that's how I thought of that scene.
Yes.
It's pretty macabre.
But I think that this is the case in point, that the scuba work, that is McClory's area. It's Kevin McClory is an expert scuba diver. And he has had a lot of experience. That is the dive map. All these sites around Nassau. He's dived on these sites, like he knows them like the back of his hand. And I think that this is the crux of the fallout, that although Ian loves a bit of swimming and snorkeling, it's the scuba action, all the technological know-how, dive pressures, all the rest of it, deconpressurizing. This is McClory's area. So I think this part of it is because we hazard to ask, don't we? What would a man of Ian's abilities need a co-writer for? I think that is what makes this so different.
We'll find out as this law case, if this law case progresses. But according to Ian and according to rumor, the whole thing with McElroy and Whittinger,
McClory, David.
McClory, you're right.
McClory. You're yourself, David, aren't you? You're worried about because he is bloody litigious, this fella.
Yeah, litigious. He is.
McElroy.
Yes. Give him a name. The Glory Property had a movie coming out that was entered into Cannes. I think it was called The Boy on the Bridge or something. And Ian thought it was great to align himself with a potential award-winning director. Well, when the movie came out, the movie has turned out to be a complete turkey. So McClory is no longer as appealing to Ian as he once was. And I also think he's found this partnership of 3 people writing something to be quite painful. So he just wants to distance himself from the whole thing. And Ian regards Bond as his own property. And he was always going to write the book anyway, because that was part of the overall deal. So he sees no foul in this whatsoever. Whether or not the court will take that view, time will tell. But it's a bit of a mess, it's fair to say. But I think that, you know, Andy's right. McClory does have a big diving pedigree, but so does Ian. Really, you know. So in the descriptive writing is typically Fleming. I thought it was set to get back to the book itself. I thought the set pieces and the showdown underwater, it was great. The other thing,
and that's the first time we've seen Bond as a real leader of men, haven't we? Normally he's with the femme fatale, but here he's got a group of US submariners with him on the attack. So you see his leadership style for the first time.
Yeah.
He is,
and he's a natural leader to them, isn't he?
Yeah, straight away.
He's at the point of the arrowhead, and all the rest of them are fanning out behind him.
The vanguard, yeah.
So, but didn't you,
I was wondering about the submarine. I presume Fleming's got a bit of experience of being on submarines, and was he in the Navy? I can't remember.
Navy intelligence. Whether it ever took you on a submarine, I'm not sure.
Probably more office-based then. But he's I mean, the way he writes about the submarine, and you know, it's not the most interesting of passages when he describes a submarine, but it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And you just get that feeling of claustrophobia of all those men bunched together.
There's one area,
fathoms under the sea.
There's one area that we know that Ian really, really does know. And when I saw when it cropped up in the book, part of me died a little. But once it got going, when that's a casino, that's the DNA. That goes right back to Casino Royale, doesn't it? And the way it's teed up between Largo and Bond. Oh my goodness! You know, when it's like a forehand backhand slap, Spectre. And you can almost hear, you know, Largo go, you know.
But again, you're right. It's Fleming writing what he knows best. The underwater scenes, the marine life, and then the gaming again. Yet another game. But it's still, and I know nothing about Chemin de Fer. I can't play it, but I still followed along in the book. Yeah, because the dialogue was so good.
Yeah. It did seem a bit odd though that Largo let Bond and Felix, you know, be guests on his boat. It just seemed, why would he do that?
Yeah.
it just seemed a little bit far fetched.
Agreed.
Well, it was
makes
under the guise of buying the property, with Largo living in.
I just thought that in reality, Largo would be very cautious about letting anyone near his boat.
But he wouldn't let him go downstairs, would he?
No, exactly. Yeah, where
the radio room,
nuclear bombs were.
You know, now you mention it, I do think it's flimsy. At the time, it didn't. At the time, I was on the Fleming sweep, right? He was bringing me with him.
You go along with it.
But now,
wasn't he invited by Domino onto the boat? Because when he initially turns up on the boat, Largo's not expecting it. Because they turn up in their own sort of little boat.
Yeah.
And he's
Largo can't help but show off the boat.
Yeah.
He gives them a tour. Yeah. And, his ego is so big, he has to show what he's got, what he's worth. It's that narcissist, and he shows them everything apart from the whole.
I don't think it was too far fetched.
Also, he's
listen. Let's be honest, right? If I'm about to nick 2 nuclear bombs from underwater, I'm not letting 2 hoorays on the boat, right? I've got my job to do. But I say that, I think it's flimsy, David. But it didn't ruin the story for me. It didn't ruin the read.
No,
it wasn't jarring. It's only now we're talking about it.
Didn't it?
I think it was quite clever the way he did it, and also clever that he name dropped.
Weekly, that's for sure.
Don't read his stuff. So, But it was interesting. The owner of the house where Largo was staying was owned by a certain Mr. Bryce.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, Bryce.
Well, there was a few.
He likes using his friend's name.
A few of his friends have crept into this one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Be fun to go back.
Palmyra, isn't it? Palmyra's his place.
Yes. Yeah. What about the lady in the action? We can't forget her. I mean, I thought she was outstanding. She's a real.
Why? What made her outstanding for
you?
She's a real
feisty creation. I mean, Fleming's Fleming always writes strong women, and this one was kind of off the Richter scale. Bombing around.
Strongest so far.
Yeah, bombing around Nassau in her little MG, and she was really, really quite the girl. And of course, he tied her very well into the plot, with her being the sister of the Italian pilot that they paid to hijack the plane in the first place. So I mean, I thought her entry was great, and I thought she was a real good development in the story. And as per normal, Bond took her under his wing and looked after her in a very, very gentlemanly fashion, I would say.
Well, apart from one incident where he takes her into the changing rooms, they have sex, and then he tells her that, by the way, your brother's died. It was a strange thing to do, I thought.
He wouldn't say it before.
I mean, you can see why he did it, because he wanted to sleep with her. But not that gentlemanly, though, I thought.
Great, that's what I used before. And it's not going to act to the frisson of the situation.
Yeah. Also very cinematic.
Yeah.
I also it was when after Bond had met Domino and gone for a drink with her and all the rest of it. That's what I was talking about, dead zones, that it was kind of dead until she reappeared. Because she was just kind of like David said, she's more like a plot device than a character. And I think he had to make the decision whether to include her more a la Tiffany Case or draft Leiter in, or, there's maybe an argument, would he have needed Leiter at all, So I don't know. But I thought, she was nice and strong-willed. We got a nice insight into Bond stroke Ian's view about women drivers and all the rest of it.
Well, on that point, I'm worried that if he writes another novel, the villain's going to be 4 women in a car.
Right? Yeah.
He doesn't have rant about that, you know?
Yeah.
But that just sounded like it was one of Fleming's prejudices, and he had to get it out onto the page. It was so obviously Fleming that
He
feels
was
that way.
Wasn't he? He wanted to be sort of the modern man and complimentary about how strong she was, but he kind of ended up acting to the goal and said, well, she drove like a man. Yeah, no, so she's all right.
Great description.
Can there be a finer compliment?
Yeah. But also,
You see,
it's strange how he always, like you said, he with Honey Rider, she had the broken nose.
Yes.
And this lady's got a leg slightly shorter than the other.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing. It's like a fetish for him.
Yeah, it is, yeah. She's got hair like
Also,
Bardo.
on the fetish foot front, I did detect a little foot fetish in this. When he had
Oh, with the spine.
CX spines.
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely kinky.
But then she played along with it, didn't she? She was making out it really hurt, and then afterwards she said it didn't really hurt that much.
Yeah.
So they were both up for it, weren't they? Let's face it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm slightly surprised at your reaction, David, and maybe it's just me, because she didn't strike me as a particularly memorable heroine. The only thing that really stood out for me was how strong she was in terms of that torture scene, or the implied torture by Largo, and you think, oh, he's really going to do a job on her, and she stands up and you know, endures that horrid pain. So I've got total respect for her in that regard, but I'm not sure a couple of years down the road I'd really be able to recall much about her other than she was good in the car and CX spines, maybe.
But again, just like in the short stories, she did the job like two of the ladies did it in the last book.
Yes.
She shot, didn't she?
Yes.
You know,
She saved Bond's life
by Largo.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about Largo earlier, Shane, that was what struck me about his description, was that we were presented with a man who was pretty much invulnerable. You know, and you a bit like Donovan Grant back in From Russia with Love.
Yes.
As soon as he's described, you're thinking, goodness me, if Bond's locked in a room with him, I'm fearing for Bond, frankly. That's how it panned out, wasn't it? That Largo.
Yeah, Bond was about to be strangled or whatever by Largo.
He would have been if not.
And then she shoots him through the neck with a harpoon gun.
Good job she didn't miss.
Yeah.
Was there anything
It's
in this book
interesting, isn't it?
about...
She saved his life, so no longer the damsel in distress, but you know,
absolutely,
he had to be rescued.
Was there anything in the book that we learned about Bond that we weren't aware of before, or did anything stand out?
He seemed happier than before, I thought.
Yes. Less melancholy. Yeah, he seemed happier. That's true.
Yeah.
And
more easy.
well, I mean, the character development was certainly there. I mean, he seems to be aging in real time with the project.
That's one question I've got for you, David. He gave the ages of Lippy, Count Lippy, and also Largo as around 40. And then at some point, I think quite late on in the book, Bond is described as around 35. Now, he's not 35. He was 35 when he started in Casino Royale.
Doesn't age, does it?
So he's got to be around the 40 mark, hasn't he? And
at least, and
also, he stated at the beginning that it's been very quiet. Cold War's has cooled off. There's been no action for a 00. So maybe they've took the eye off the ball regarding rescinding his 00, because at the end of the day, there hasn't really been any use for the 00 section. Because, correct me, please, if I'm wrong here, but I think it was stated by when Mr. Conway did this series that there's a time limit on a 00 license.
Retirement age, yes.
Exactly, yeah. So,
well, maybe they waived it because he's so successful. Yeah.
What's the point of rescinding
the series going
if there's no 00 work going? You know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You got the answer.
Yeah.
How satisfied were we with the conclusion of this novel?
I was.
Yes,
it seemed to. It ended quickly, didn't it? You know, the scene in the hospital. It was over very quickly, and I can imagine that was how a film would end. There wasn't anything else to say really, so I thought it made sense. It just seemed a little bit abrupt to me.
Yeah.
I smelled a twist. You know, when the doctor came in at the end, right at the end, I thought, hello, we're on the cusp of a twist here. There's going to be one last fight with the doctor, but it didn't happen.
Right.
Didn't happen.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I thought that would be Blofeld in disguise or something like that. You know?
Yes. Well, of course,
Maybe-
Ian wrote this one last year, and what he has said, because the new one he's virtually finished the new one, which will be number. What number was Thunderball?
This is 9th. This is the 9th.
Number 9.
This is the 9th. So the 10th one. Is it really the 9th?
Yeah, this is number 9.
So the 10th one is promised a real it's promising it to be a big departure from anything that he's ever done.
Right.
That's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he links it back to the unfinished business with Blofeld.
Yeah, I hope it's not short
Has he given
stories
any
again.
clues as to what it might be? Which
No, I
direction
mean,
it's
I
going?
pressed him on it, but the old boy wasn't saying. But
Well, I heard a
No.
whisper. I heard a whisper, and this sounds crazy, and maybe it is. I heard a whisper that the Soviets are very close to putting a man in space. Very, very close. And I wonder if this next novel coming up is going to have that kind of dimension.
all right, not so sure.
He's saying this one felt to me, you used the great word, David, cinematic. It felt more like an adventure movie.
Yeah.
Is he getting bored? Is he feeling constrained, or does he just want to go crazy with it?
I don't know what a big departure is. We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
Maybe Bond will join the priesthood. Who knows?
That'd be quite a dull book, wouldn't it?
Netherlands hasn't worked, so it's the monastery for you. Yeah?
Yeah.
You know, Ian's life has imitated his art, isn't it? That he's found himself in a troubling situation. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, the fact that we found Bond wanted to give up smoking and so forth. So maybe you're not far wrong, David, regarding the priesthood. You know.
Andy, if David worked his magic, right, and he got Ian in here now for a little chat about Thunderball, is there a question you'd have for him?
Yeah.
I was open to all three of you.
A question that's popped up a couple of times over these last few years when we've met and spoke about these new books, and that would be, where is he now regarding if this Saltzman can find someone else to put the money up, who would he have as James Bond 007? Who would he have cast? Yeah,
he's had that sort of he's been banging lots of names around already on that one. We've had sort of mention of Cary Grant, David Niven. There's all sorts of A-list propositions.
Cary Grant, an American, or was he born in England?
He's born in Bristol.
Archibald Lee.
Yes. Young Archie. He was Archie Lee.
Is he not slightly too old for that part, though? I mean, and David Niven as well. You think maybe 10 years ago they would have fitted in with Bond's age, but
I don't know. I know it's just names that Ian's been sort of pushing around. You know?
I kind of hope they go with an unknown, because that would be fitting. He's a secret agent rather than if I see Cary Grant, I'm going to be thinking about all sorts of other characters that he's played. Whereas an unknown agent, personally for me, I think that'd be good.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Maybe
James Mason.
That's another name that's been banged around. Or Rich.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Did he tap you up, David, for M?
No. He's been talking to this chap, Jason King, about that role. I don't know where that's going.
I can imagine. Well, gentlemen, it's been great to get together again to talk about Thunderball. As you can tell by myself, it wasn't my favorite, but still a really good read. It wasn't a waste of time. I enjoyed the read. It was a thrilling read. Just not one of my favorites. For you, Andy, where would you put Thunderball in your
I would
reading of the book so
put it
far?
above Dr. No. I would put it above Goldfinger. I would put it below Diamonds, and certainly I would put it below Moonraker and The Top Drawer, which was From Russia with Love. So good ideas, lots of good ideas. We had good ideas in Goldfinger, bit better with the humour and all the rest of it, and bringing us into the decade. But yeah, not one of the best, but not one of the worst. Not one of the worst, but not one of the best.
How about you, Ian?
I think probably second behind From Russia with Love, because I just thought it was the most exciting. I think From Russia with Love is a better novel. I did like the short stories, but I just want a proper full-on adventure, a proper book. So I'd put it just ahead of Goldfinger. I'm not so keen. I mean, although Moonraker is very good, I like the foreign locations. I love that description of somewhere that you don't know. Whereas in Moonraker, I know London and Kent. It's not so exciting to me. And Casino Royale was, France, which is nice, but not so exotic. So I think mainly because of the locations and the humour and all the underwater stuff, the marine life, I'd put this second.
How about you, David?
Oh, something we omitted to mention. Great cover, by the way. Love the cover.
Oh, yes.
And evidently choppers are starting to bleed in dry now.
Financial.
Yeah, but it was a great cover. In terms of the book itself, I thought it was top quartile. I'd put it up, maybe number 3 or number 4. I much preferred it to Dr. No and Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever. It's a very different. These are, and we've made this comment before. I mean, these books are not. He's not sort of doing a sort of rinse and repeat of these books. I mean, they're becoming quite different, I think, in many regards.
Yeah.
And he's obviously using Bond as a vehicle to write different types of novels, which I think is completely fine. So I'd put it in the top quartile. I enjoyed it very much. Lots of loose ends. I'm sure we'll see Spectre again.
We were halfway through, weren't we, before we got the briefing this time, the full briefing of the mission.
Yes.
That was a great scene as well.
Yes. And there's a lot of character development of the.
Where did he get the name Blofeld? That's another. His names of his villains are amazing, aren't they?
Well, it's German for a start, and we know Ian doesn't care much for the Krauts, does he?
All the ginger hair people.
All the old people. All the young.
Or female drivers.
All women.
I mean, there is a lot in this book. He's packed an awful lot in.
He really has.
Chatting with it now about the car scene and the drink scene with Felix.
I think it'll stand up to repeated readings as well.
Yes.
Because I think you'll find you go back and think, I didn't notice that before, and I think it's definitely worth another read.
So you feel people will reread these in the future, Ian?
I think some will. I think I would. If a book's really good, I'll read it again a few years later. I would definitely read it again. Yeah.
Marvelous. Gentlemen, thanks a million for meeting. I'm really excited to see you next year to see what Ian's going to serve up for us.
1992, a big departure.
The one in space.
Yeah, and we wish him well with his recovery. Not in space. That's just so far-fetched, isn't it? I keep seeing this stuff. But
well, good luck to him. Maybe he'll recover soon.
Yes, indeed.
Good luck, Ian.
And thank you to all of you for joining us, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on your device. Come join us in the online community where you can tell us your views on this and previous Fleming novels. You can find that at spybrary.com/community.